Okay, welcome everybody. Uh, Today we are uh, fortunate to have Richard Mallory with us. Mr. Mallory is a subject matter expert in government operations. He specializes in organizational performance, project management, program management, and quality management. Richard is an ASQ certified quality auditor. He's also certified as PMP from the Project Management Institute, and he is has been a lead examiner for Baldrige Quality Award. Today, he's going to talk about the topic bringing quality to government operations, how ASQ and ANSI G1 standard provides us the guidance star for efficiency and effectiveness. So, without further ado, this is Richard. Go ahead, please.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody. I'm happy to have you all along on this journey. We're literally talking about I think, the most important thing in our society, which is government. And what we're interested in is how do we bring quality tools to government? How do we make government the very best it can be through quality? And we can. Um, I've already been introduced, but let me just point out a couple things that I'm proud of in my resume. One is that almost my entire career I've been in government, and I've been both a government executive at the state and federal level, running government agencies and implementing quality, as well as a consultant and a trainer in quality. So I'm proud of that, and it's given me a unique perspective on what the problems are and how to solve them. I think another thing that's really important is the ANSI G1 standard. Through the auspices of our government division, I am the lead author of the ASQ ANSI G1 standard, and literally that's a testament to government, to ASQ itself, that if you stand up and volunteer, there's no end to where it may take you. So thanks also to the government division for bringing it to this point. And may I welcome you all again. I think this presentation presents a new frontier for quality in government. It will include new terms, it'll include some new approach and some new methods using really just the basis and the body of knowledge of quality. We've adapted that a lot to government environment. And in doing that, we've got some things to offer as well that you could use in private industry. So as the first bullet point notes, it shares a unique and new means of scoring the maturity of quality practices. And the value of that is profound. Being able to uniformly anywhere in government is our interest, but anywhere in industry as well, to measure the quality maturity of every given manager. Huge. And I'll talk more about that as I go through. It's also designed to fit the unique challenge of quality in government. And what is that unique challenge of quality in government? Pretty much it's a transition of leadership. If you want to put it in a nutshell, government is always having leaders come and go, and the interest in quality, even if it exists, disappears between leaders. So how do you create a sustainable culture of quality? And I did too listen in a bit on our one of our government division past chairs, Dr. Rhonda Farrell, this morning, was talking about flywheel culture change. And that's exactly what we have here. Is if we can break down quality to the management unit and to responsibilities of individual managers and make it measurable, we'll have a flywheel, because now everybody's individually accountable. So we feel that it'll drive the culture of quality. The last thing that I think is critically important and brand new to quality, and you'll see it nowhere else in the ASQ body of knowledge, is an ability to standardize systems, to document and standardize systems. There's a lot of attempts here and there, but there's nothing comprehensive as we have in ANSI G1. So welcome. I think you're going to enjoy this a whole lot. ANSI G1 introduces several new quality tools, and I told you, actually, I think the terms, approach, and methods is a better definition, but the primary term is a best practice operational plan. By breaking down the expectations of a manager to implement quality along with their good management, we bring into play the idea of each manager having to have a best practice operational plan and one that includes quality principles in it. I'll talk more about that. But measures and indicators for feedback and control, and that's something else that I don't think quality literature emphasizes enough. So that's another one of our new approaches. We'll talk about visible management, and we'll talk about measures and indicators, not for just analysis, but for feedback and control. If we use those things, if we define them based on quality principles and requirements, and then we regularly use them, all of a sudden we're going to have powerful new methods. Results measures to show if workflows are efficient and effective. And one of the other terms that we use differently in ANSI G1 is the idea of workflow, because now all of a sudden, if we have, we all know the body of knowledge of quality has tons of material on defining process. But what we're adding is a whole bunch of material on documenting systems. And we're calling both of those workflows together. And I'll mention that as I go through the presentation. Lastly, it's an auditable standard, and it can be used by external auditors or third parties to verify. And it creates our visible scorecard. One of the things that I love to talk about is ANSI G1 supports the operations requirements of ISO 9001 and Baldrige. In fact, one of the things that motivated me to dive into the area of how do we document systems was Baldrige. As you heard in my introduction, I was 7 times Baldrige examiner, 6 at the state award, once at the national award. But I'd always come to category 6, which is operations now. And they would say you have to have an approach and a deployment of a system, but that's all they would say. And, sure, then what does that look like? How do you do that? And we've defined that in ANSI G1. So my objectives here, we hope to get you some exciting new quality skills and also to be a wake-up call for government. So we're going to do both those things. Hopefully we're going to excite you to want to bug your government, whatever governments are in your area or that you have some span of control in. Either use this standard or implement it or create scorecards for government. And that's a powerful thing, the idea of a scorecard for government. I know I'm in Sacramento, California. Just one area that our state government did something I thought really worthwhile was they said every water district's got to do an annual report to the water users of the quality of water and the issues and challenges they face. So it's a cool little management report. It only applies to water districts, but it's a little bit like at the federal level, the GIPRA that required agencies to do an annual report. But what we're talking about is through ANSI G1, if it's used systematically throughout government, every government entity would have to have that, from departments to branches to offices to units. They'd all have to have it. And it is feasible and practical when you delegate it down to the manager level. So, and here maybe I'll ask our moderator, have you got the the first poll question ready to go or no? If you do, then we'd want to use it right here.
Okay.
I think we could.
Okay. So what's the question?
the first poll question?
The first poll question is for the technical moderator. I think. Okay, so we have the poll question. Hopefully other people are able to see it and respond to it. There you go. Okay, so we are getting responses. Okay, so I'm going to use that as a feedback. The question is, why did you choose to attend this presentation? And the responses that we have, there are about 28% that say that they are quality practitioner in government and hope to use these skills. About 48%, which is the majority, they are curious about how it is possible to implement quality in government. And then there are 24% that are interested in quality applications. So a lot of them that want to know how you can implement quality in government.
Yep. Yep. And that's a powerful thing. And I'm glad you're here because we need folks like you in the bigger community to make an impact through ANSI G1. Thank you for doing that. So the one thing I wanted to talk a bit about is, why government, why do we have government? Some people say, isn't that just sort of a pestilence or a nuisance, or it's just taking up tax revenues? What do we really need government for? And I always like to emphasize providing standards for commerce and prosperity. And I have a clock on there because I think a lot of people may not know that there is a U.S. official time that's maintained jointly by the Navy, the U.S. Navy and the Department of Commerce, that there's several atomic clocks that are provided by government that provide a standardized time. Why is that a government role? Well, actually, back in the 1800s, when telegraphs were first invented, now all of a sudden we had a need for uniform nationwide time, both for running of trains and transmission of messages by telegraph. And likewise, today that's come forward. Of course, we all knew how to be on time for the meeting today, which was commerce. And we all are communicating by internet, which is satellites, and they all depend on a standardized time. So prosperity, commerce, roads. Another thing I always like to talk about is safety for our wealth. When I am talking to my retirement counselor and he's able to transfer my money from here to there, I say, how do I know you're not committing fraud? How do I know you're not moving my money to your account? And he says, well, the audits, right? Audits, which is federal government, safety for ourselves and our family, both Department of Defense, police departments, and even stuff like food safety. The folks tend to forget, there have been multiple incidences of salmonella in foods that have been detected by government. Our system of law, our title for property, our ports, airports, highways, whatever. And I always like to say government is the enabler of our nation. If we did not have government, we'd be living in chaos. There could be no enforcement of contracts, no roads for transportation. You go on and on and on and on. Without government, we're helpless and alone. And so, yeah, we have to have quality. It's huge for us, quality in government. A lot of people say, I hate my taxes, and I do too, of course. It's my responsibility. Taxes are the cost of government, what you pay, but quality is the benefit of government, what you get. So, we all know we need to focus more on the get what we get for our money and making sure we get the best value for our money and the things that we want for our money. Quality is the way that we're going to do that. So why does quality in government suffer? And I guess pretty much it's my incomplete list, but hey, when you have a board of directors, Congress, and they're always arguing about my goals, your goals, and your goals stink, and my goals are great, and I'm going to crush you with my goals, and tell everybody why your goals are an error. Can you imagine a company running that way? I can't. And so what we need to do is we need to find a way to influence government to do those things. We have courts and legislatures that they're always generating new things for government agencies to do, but they never remove them. They never sit down and say which of these are no longer needed. They won't prioritize, so they want to, when money gets tight, they always want to cut back on the budgets, but they won't say what's more important or what could be given up. Legislatures never accept the blame. They always want to blame government workers. They're the fault. They're the problem. No recognition of learning and improvement. And I guess, if we're sort of running these by what we know as the basis of quality improvement in organizations, we're saying, is this really what we want for our government? We want this. And bottom line is ownership is rejected and criticism is embraced. The folks we elect to government rarely say, oh, it's my fault that the park system isn't running better. They say, oh, the employees are bad, or they're wasting money, or and they never get root cause analysis. So we know that that's not happening. Back to what we're trying to do. What's achievable? What we can do is we can go back and get a report card on everything as a starting place. And if we do, how are we going to get that report card? We want to measure quality in government workflows. So in essence, we're saying we have all these things. We need a designed workflow, a unit of work that we're going to try to analyze and improve, process or system in our ANSI G1 language. And yeah, we want somebody to take responsibility for that, the manager. We want to know that they have some supply management, some supplier management in place. We want to know that they designed requirements. We want to know that they're bought into streamlining prevention. They understand cost of quality, what waste looks like, where it may be. We want to see that they've got a standardized best practice. We want to see that they have engaged and empowered workers. We want to see them identify waste and do cycles of analysis for sure, even if not improvement. Root cause analysis by itself, I suppose, will lead us to improvement, but we want to see the cycles of analysis first, and risk identification. We want to see ongoing measurement and feedback. Remember, I told you about how important the feedback is. And that creates a system of visible management and visible management, and allows results analysis, learning and improvement, all the things that we know are important with quality itself. So we took these things, all right, which everybody can agree on, and we said, let's put these in some category groups and some statements then that an auditor can use, a reviewer, to see if they exist. And if they can exist at a given level, then we can score it. So honestly, we've done this with a number of government entities in a lot of areas. And what we're finding is most government entities are coming in at 2, maybe 3. Rarely we find one that's at a 4 level. But it's all about, the structure and purpose. Is it standardized? Is it current? Is it used in management? The measurements, feedback. Have you only got one measure? Is only output? Got multiple measures? Are some of them leading? Risk, are you doing an annual assessment or any kind of risk response planning? Engagement improvement, staff is involved in the whole process. There's annual analysis and improvement. And we broke it down. That was just my simplified version, but as you can see, we've got some detailed language for each one of the criteria. So this happens to be just level 3. If you were to look at goal directedness through measures and feedback, we'd say executive managers regularly receive and review performance feedback. So now all of a sudden we're saying, don't even just tell me you've got measures there, but if nobody's seeing them and using them, and if they're not current, if they're not flowing into management meetings and resulting in discussion, analysis, and improvement, it's kind of meaningless, right? So we've got a whole number of audit standards for each one of these, and there is a system maturity model, as this one is out of, and a process maturity model. So we can score from 1 to 5, and this is why we're so excited, because this is our uniform standardized method of evaluating the use of well-known quality practices. You just saw the well-known list back in a bit. And our goal in terms of visible management is to do this, that even at the executive level, a lot of what executive does is systems and projects, but a system like budget management, right? Or quality management or oversight. We can define all those 3 things as systems. Wastewater operations, and this is just an example from a past client I had, but they have both systems and processes. Water operations, both systems and processes. Like an annual water plan for groundwater extraction or maintenance of the groundwater system would be obviously a system. But we can break this down to every unit, and in this manner, we could have a scorecard that's unique. Again, flowing down to every manager in that unit and giving them a score. One of the things that we like about ANSI G1 is that we try not to create a red score, like a frightening failure score, except for 0 if somebody's not using any quality practices. And we try to have even the lower ranks like 1 and 2 at the yellow level, and then the higher 2s and 3s at the green level, and the super performers at the blue level. So our idea is to create a visible scorecard. Also, as you see on the right, we can create percentage. So management can set a goal for what level of quality adoption they want to have. So in effect, this management group might be saying a 3.0 is at a 75% level. So they'd be giving out scorecards to everybody on that basis. And I always like to talk about why we fail to measure maturity everywhere. And I think it's because we, quality people, tend to take all the responsibility ourselves instead of delegating that out. So in taking all the responsibility of ourselves, we revert to organization-wide thinking. We say, well, the organization should be doing this. And this is a classic example. This is a really old version, but it mirrors a lot of versions everywhere of other attempts to score the maturity of quality: an initial stage, a defined stage, an optimizing stage. And we always, if you look at any one of those, we're talking about the organization as a whole. So like if we look at level 3, we're saying the organization has established a formal quality system that's integrated. Quality management is managed proactively. How as auditors, how are we going to know? We can see, yes, some places, no other places. They got these cool things here. They got these cool things here. How are we going to know? How are we going to score that? It becomes really arbitrary. I don't have a lot more time, so I'm probably going to go a little bit quickly through these, but here I wanted to talk about the system structure, how we standardize system. And what we do is we break it down into milestones, and we create requirements for every milestone. And then we do the bottom part is where it says activity action. We're doing cause and effect. We're doing a positive cause and effect. What drives success at that? So, if we just grabbed a really commonplace example, we might say any government agency is going to have sort of an annualized planning, maybe. They're going to have annual operations, and they're going to have a training and improvement step, and probably some sub steps of that. But basically, if we're saying the first step is annualized planning, our milestone can be, meetings informing uh, current managers of active practices and annual results. And then we can define what drives that in below. But I'll show you some other examples here that maybe you can relate to a little better. But what we're doing is we're saying every manager has to have a defined purpose. They have to have requirements. They have to have a best practice operational plan. They have to have feedback based on the requirements. Maturity requires leading measures, not just lagging measures. We want to see frontline awareness, visible management, reporting of results. We want to see alignment with support processes and systems, and we want to see supplier and supply management. And by the way, I saw in the program here, one of my good friends, Russ Snyder, is doing a seminar on supply management Thursday, which I'm sure is going to be a killer presentation. In any case, these are all reasonable things for managers, and managers literally can't say they're doing a good job if they're not doing these things. Can they? Say I'm a good manager, but I can't really tell you what my defined purpose is, and my defined purpose is both outputs, maybe a mission statement, and or outputs, which is maybe a list of licenses or reviews or audits or whatever I do every year, and the outcomes that those are designed to achieve. I can't tell you that. If I'm a good manager, I sure can, and I can tell you requirements of every one. How many audits I'm going to do, how many licenses that we're going to issue, how many whatever it is we're going to do this year, contracts, procurements, whatever. Operational plan, I can't tell you who does what and show you on a piece of paper. I can't show you any feedback based on those requirements. When you go through this is all just good management, and we need to insist that managers do those things. I'm just going to spend a minute to talk about this, which is there's a difference of task. That sometimes people are in assembly lines where they're doing only one thing in a day, and that's where we find the sweet spot for process management. And other times we have somebody like this fellow on the right that's managing a parts counter or a supply unit, and he's got to do questions and answers, complaints, process payments, process shipments, restock shelves, and share that with a group. So we know that tasks are different than activities and actions. Tasks apply largely to processes. Activities and actions apply largely to systems. We know at the top left here, we have processes that have a lot of people in them that are doing the same things. They're highly focused, and maybe they use a lot of machines for producing whatever it is. And then we have down at the bottom right, we have workflows that have fewer people, or maybe just a couple people, and maybe few machines and multiple job duties. So, like a legal office is like that, or if somebody's doing strategic planning or environmental analysis, it's like that. It's a system, not a process. We all know what a process looks like. We're all real familiar with that. Quality spent a whole lot of time helping us define those and talk about those high iteration, single production unit type things. We can gather all kinds of data, do statistics, have a real picnic and a field day with that. But what about systems? So with systems, we introduced the term principal activity groups, which are key program activities. They represent a business purpose or function. But they're always distinguished by defined and unique output requirements, and that's the sweet spot of an activity. When we define its unique output requirements, we're starting to define measurables. So here's an example perhaps you can relate to real well. We've all sat in a Starbucks coffee shop from time to time, and the manager is trying to create excellent daily operations. So this is a management unit. We can apply a system map because we can define it into those keystone shaped activities at the top: clean and well-maintained store, orders. It doesn't say it in specific objective terms, but orders are taken promptly, accurately, and fulfilled, right? And when I say all those things, now all of a sudden, if you're thinking, you're saying, "Ha, those are the requirements, right? Those are things I can measure." And so we look across and we can see the various activities that are each defined by a unique requirement and able to be measured, and that would have unique tasks and actions that drive those things. So taking orders is obviously driven by updated and maintained menu board. People can read it fast, they can read it early. A whole lot of things we can design in there that is indeed system mapping. I'm going to kind of skim through this, but the first rule of system mapping is purpose. We want to say objectives, and we want to say outputs, because outputs are the final thing we're going to measure and that tell us if we're achieving what we intended to through our objectives. Below here is the positive cause and effect. Positive cause factors that drive success at each of the activities, activity groups, and milestones. And each one of those principal activity groups has defined output measures or defined output requirements that we're going to refine into measures. Maturity itself within every process, we certainly see this in process management. We're going to rate the maturity higher the more points of control and feedback, i.e. measurements, that we have, right? So this is showing us in any workflow, we have multiple chances of measuring, and we're going to score a higher maturity, more points we score at. Later on in the program, I think it's Thursday, a good colleague of mine, Grace Duffy, is going to talk about this in depth if you're intrigued by it. So I would advise you to find Grace Duffy's presentation. But we did use system structuring to analyze election operations. That's been controversial in the past. And out of the goodness of our hearts, government division said, hey, if you want to audit an election operations, here's how to do it. We just used the system structure. We broke down the primary subgroups, and then we defined measures off of those and tasks and actions in parallel. So everybody wants to know that the voter record, who's eligible to vote, which is number one, is accurate. There's a whole lot of things involved in that. We want to know on all those things, but number five, election operations are efficient, effective, and so on. So here's the beginning of our system map. And we just grabbed one of those, which is in-person early voting. And again, you see it breaks down to principal activities that drive that. Operations planning on the far right is maybe one of the more critical ones because that's the daily operations. Once you've defined everything else, staffed everything else, you have your logistics in place, you basically are running a daily operation, which it maybe has accounting for ballots at the beginning of the day, accounting for ballots at the end of the day, how many completed ballots were transmitted for processing, any spoiled ballots, and you have protocols for locking down ballots. So all quality, right? I mean, this is all quality. We're quality professionals. We can do this all day long. And it's like, why does nobody ask us? Because we can do this. Government doesn't have to be a mystery where politicians are just jumping on everybody and criticizing things and accusing people of stuff. We can create objective criteria that we can measure and anybody can measure and a third party can audit and we can score. There's no reason for the nonsense we go through. So I've got two slides that are just in terms of defining the measures. In other words, establishing a voter record and keeping it accurate. is reflected at the outcome end at rejected ballots, election operations, by waiting time, spoiled ballots, tabulate verified by completion of verification and audit steps. Um, we can use, once we've defined things, we can use a failure mode risk analysis. So great way for election operations to error proof their operations. And that leads us again to possible measures. So there's no reason why we can't do this. We know ANSI G1 is a solution, and I think it's the solution. It should be mandated government-wide. Just ask yourselves, why do we do annual fiscal audits on government entities and we don't do annual quality audits? They're certainly feasible, as you can see. And that's the message that I guess I would hope everybody who's listening may carry back to their section and maybe carry back to any government entity they're involved with. Why not? Why not show us you're excellent? Why not show us you know what you're doing? Why not show us, give us a public report card of what's happening? Two other things I'll mention is, if you're really interested, we have a certificate that Government Division has developed. We've got an online training course, complete at your own pace, 10 to 20 hours. Here's the QR code. If you're interested in attending, please do. And we would love to have you join us in that. Ways you can help: use self-certification materials. We have a super good webpage, qualitygovernment.org. You can score your own organization. You can purchase the ANSI G1 standard from the ASQ bookstore. Become a member of our government division or Center for Quality Standards in Government, which manages the new standard. Publicize or sponsor briefings for government leaders, or attend the training. Pilot programs, advocate its use. Government Division is declared November 19 of World Quality Month as Quality in Government Day. We are going to celebrate this year. We're asking for co-sponsors of that event in local areas by sections or by government entities. So I hope now you share your new vision of excellence in our government. I don't know if we have time for the last poll question. I'll leave that up to our moderator, but thank you very much for listening. I hope you share some of the passion that I have, and quality is the answer to effective and efficient government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, for such a great presentation. I can see a lot of people are showing their appreciation by claps and thank yous. I do not have too many questions in the chat, but I do have a couple for you. I guess the first one, again, you have given us a great framework that we can use. Hopefully, the different government entities can use. We'd all love to see that applied to the government. I guess the question is, uh, this still is a qualitative assessment, and how do you ensure that you have different stakeholders who agree to the same measurement? So, in other words, what I call is standard, and you call it it is streamlined already, or best capable. How do you bring people on the same page and same definition of that ranking?
It just, again, goes back to quality practice, fact-based management. So first, if we define what the purpose of every management unit of government is, if we clearly have a clear statement of purpose, and then we know we can say, well, this government agency creates outputs. And one of the things that I've found difficult with government leaders everywhere is when you say what you produce here, they'll talk about, well, we do consultations, or we do advisements, or we do, and you go, well, that's not a real thing. It's nothing I can count. What we're basically saying is what's verifiable, observable, documentable, measurable. Don't give me things that are descriptive and subjective. We intervene in public events. Well, what does that mean? We create public meetings. Okay. We create information brochures. Okay. Well, how many people read them? And why do you do that? To accomplish what? And what's that requirement? Requirement is knowledge of programs. Okay. How do you measure that? We basically at every step break it down into things that can be measured. So if somebody is saying, well, my program is efficient now, we say, well, then you can show me your outcomes, your outputs. You can show me your requirements, measurements that derive from the requirements, the results that you achieve from application of that. And show me a best practice plan that's specific to how it relates to each person and how they're recognized and rewarded, all auditable things. And if we break it down to in that manner, using the principles of good quality practice, we're there.
Perfect. Perfect. I have a question that I probably somebody from outside the U.S. Uh, can this standard be applied to government in other countries?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. Uh, I just did in January, the federal government of the Philippines invited me to do a presentation to them. So yes, we've trained designated examiners in Nigeria and Brunei and other countries. And yes, it absolutely can. It's a fact-based system, so it applies anywhere.
Perfect, perfect. I think also I'm not really from the government sector. I belong to the construction and design industry. I see a lot of parallels here. I think a lot of people who are attending this seminar uh, can take the great information that is there and the standard itself because it talks about best practice operational plans, and that a lot of that is applicable to other industries. All we have to do is use a little bit of our experience and judgment and apply it to the industry where we are in. So this is, in my opinion, not just limited to the government sector. We can apply it to other industries as well. So thank you so much for doing that. I have one more question, and this
Okay.
is from Ida, and it says, "Is there a host within the government that is promoting the quality tool application for the operation?" Now, this is a more generic question. Obviously, government is not one government; it's a lot of government.
Mhm.
But basically wants to know, is there an individual agency that has knowledge and this decision making in your knowledge?
No,
It's a pretty generic question.
Most, well, mostly at the federal level. The General Accounting Office, I think at the federal level, has been a long-term influence for the use of quality practices and actually sent a couple of their people to get designated examiner certificates. Within each state, the administrative unit, whatever it is, the name varies a little bit, but typically those are the ones that will sponsor training on quality if there is any, and sometimes centralize maybe some resource people like Lean Six Sigma facilitators. Cities and counties are all different. They all like all things, they tend to have someone who does their annual evaluation, strategic planning, performance measures, performance, whatever. And many of those will have some quality training too. So that's kind of the quick course in how government tries to keep quality in place.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much again for such a great information. Somebody asked about these slides. Obviously, there was so much information. It's very hard to take notes. And I basically responded back that not all of the slide decks from all presenters are available, but some presenters are okay to share their
Mm.
slide deck. and we will find out if Richard has that or it's a redacted version of this presentation. But this presentation, its recording, will be available to everybody who registered for a certain period of time on this SharePoint site. So you can reach out to that a later point and find out if we have this presentation there. I guess one more minute to go, and I have one other question to use this time and use your expertise. There is a lot of, uh, I guess, the new concept called OKR, objectives and key results. And, the historic way of measuring has been the KPIs. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of people are interested in and if you could just very briefly, in the short time you have mentioned, how we can apply both or they go together. What is your opinion on that?
And that's I got a long response to that. I'll have to brief it down, but essentially, city managers, executives, and legislative bodies, they just want to see a KPI that's broad. So it's how happy is the public, or how low is crime, or whatever it is, and that's not really useful.
Right.
What we need to do is break those measures back down to the span of control of single managers. We all know that managers kind of hate measures anyways because they want to always look good and never look bad, and they hate
Yep,
to admit
exactly.
flaws. So that's why ANSI G1 says, what measures do you need to manage, and sort of puts them on the spot to do that. That's
Thank
that's
you.
kind of the essence of the thing, is we have to get measures down to the level of the responsibilities of people to influence those things, and then they're effective.
Thank you. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you very much, Richard, for this presentation. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye bye.